The Lily, your station for quick, reliable information regarding the ongoing miniature warfare campaign. This is the Lily Broadcast 6. Today, July 9th, is going to have a high of 102 and a low of 74. Definitely that summer heat we were all expecting. As promised, this show will document in detail the War of Alliance, from initial declaration to the final surrender. Ladies and gentlemen, the Lily exclusive documentary, The War of Alliance. To understand why war broke out, you must first go back and look at the causes. On January 13th, 2022, the International Doctrine and Guidelines Convention was held. 7 micronations signed, including the soon-to-be warring nations. This convention set rules and standards for armed conflicts. War was now seemingly open to everyone. Beastlandia and the United States of Howard realized Hobeinstein was power-hungry and thirsty for more land, all of which it could achieve due to its large amount of infantry. Tensions were high. Realizing the importance of proper communication during conflict, Beastlandia set up the Lily on January 15th. Our first broadcast would also be on this day. The Lily broadcast primarily out of Beastlandia's northwest quadrant, just north of most of the military installations. 1 month later, on February 16th, Beastlandia and the USH would formally declare war on Hobeinstein. The reasoning behind it? Prevent any Hobeinstein expansion before it even began. Beastlandia also realized it held the most powerful navy. If they could cut off all supply and transports, Hobeinstein could not directly invade due to them both being island nations. The first battle would take place on February 18th. Under Operation Artemis, Beastlandia would send 2 armed task forces towards Hobeinstein shores. The main strike group, Task Force 7, operating under codename Gulf, consisted of the carrier Hornet, carrying 20 fighters and 60 dive bombers. The carrier was screened by the battleship Texas, heavy cruisers Houston and Tuscaloosa, and the destroyers Benham, Ellet, and Cunningham. The support group was Task Force 8, codename Hotel. It consisted of the carrier Wasp, heavy cruiser Salt Lake City, destroyers Hammond, Hughes, and Morris, along with submarines Grayling and Gudgeon. The carrier Wasp carried no aircraft. It served purely as a backup landing site if the other carrier were to sink. The USH held 5 heavy cruisers for support if needed. They also supplied 6 aircraft to act as screen and 18 bombers for the attack. Early on February 18th, the battle began. The ensuing fight would be known as the attack on Hobeinstein. The aircraft bombed and strafed troop concentrations and encampments. 127 troops would die in the attack. However, 43 Beastlandic planes were shot down, along with 5 USH aircraft. Although the attack only left a mere scratch on Hobeinstein's troops, it shocked them with the ferocity at which Beastlandia and the USH forces were willing to fight. Operation Ball would be set up soon after. Unhappy with the previous amounts of damage, Operation Ball would be a shore bombardment mission. The ships in the mission would all be Beastlandic and would be split into 2 groups, battleships in Group 1 under call sign Racket, and heavy cruisers in Group 2 under call sign Pin. Racket included Task Force 4, codenamed Delta, with battleships Iowa, Maryland, and West Virginia, the submarine Surkoff, and destroyers Morris, Russell, and Blue. Pin consisted of Task Force 9, codename India, with heavy cruisers New Orleans, Astoria, Minneapolis, and Chicago, destroyers Dewey and Mottingham, and submarines Nautilus and Dolphin. The bombardment started late at night on March 2nd. The first salvos killed a combined 27 men, but it would be the only one fired that night. Suddenly, the cruiser Astoria heaved into the air from a massive explosion. A Hobeinstein battleship emerged from the dark night. Shells rained down all around the doomed Astoria. Caught in the crossfire, the destroyer Dewey was hit. The shell detonated the forward magazine, which tore the bow off of the ship, causing it to almost immediately sink. Astoria would sink soon after. The Hobeinstein battleship vanished back into the dark as suddenly as it appeared. The battleship group faced similar destruction. Frogmen had swam out to the Russell and placed mines. When they detonated, they broke her keel in several places. Fire spread across the ship. A Hobeinstein aircraft saw the fleet lit up by the fire and headed into attack. The aircraft mistook the destroyer Morris for a battleship, due to the low light conditions. The plane dropped 4 1,000-pound bombs, 3 of which hit Morris. Gun crews managed to shoot down the aircraft when it circled back around. Morris's superstructure was a flaming wreck. It was decided that they would scuttle her. In total, Beastlandia lost 1 heavy cruiser and 3 destroyers. The infamous loss of these 4 ships would go on to be known as the Carey Sea Tragedy. During the Lily broadcast of that event, the term War of Alliance would be coined. The phrase stuck, and the war would then take this name. The war was not the quick victory either side was hoping for. Thus, Operation Mudskipper was put into act. The invasion of Hobeinstein held Vintage Island. Operation Mudskipper was split into 2 sub-operations: Operation Lung, the landings, and Operation Viper, the offensive. The landings begun on May 14th. The first would be conducted by Beastlandia. They landed 298 troops and 6 tanks. The force consisted of the ships Belle, Aru, and Toryou, part of Task Force 1, codenamed Alpha. They were escorted by Task Force 10, codenamed Juliet, with destroyers Gwen, Ralph Talbot, and Anderson. In the following days, the USH would land 330 troops, while Beastlandia would land 5 more tanks, all with the same 2 task forces, Alpha and Juliet. All the landings would be unopposed at beaches in northeast Vintage Island. Operation Viper would start soon after. Beastlandic and USH troops moved south along the coast to the town of McDowell. While McDowell is a relatively small and isolated village, Hobeinstein troops had well fortified it. The entirety of Hobeinstein troops on the island were also amassed there, numbering 600 soldiers. They would attempt to hold it at all costs. On May 28th, the forces would collide. Beastlandia and USH attacked from the north with air support from Beastlandic Task Forces 7 and 8, veterans from the attack on Hobeinstein. The Battle of McDowell would become the most costly engagement of the war. When the smoke cleared away, 120 USH soldiers lay dead, alongside 130 Beastlandic soldiers and 1 tank. Hobeinstein was less fortunate. All 600 troops were killed. The next day, May 29th, at 12:19 p.m., the nation of Hobeinstein would officially surrender. The war had lasted 4 months and 16 days. This has been the Lily's exclusive documentation of the War of Alliance. Thanks for tuning in to the only quick, reliable station for the ongoing miniature warfare campaign. This has been The Lily.